On August 31st, 2024, at exactly 11:55 p.m., my heart stopped for 7 minutes, and in that suspended breath, every certainty I had ever held evaporated. My name is Daniel Fletcher, and for 30 years I chased shadows and royal obscurities. Born in Bath, Somerset, in 1966, I became an investigative journalist, enthralled by mysteries at the heart of power. From teenage curiosity about Princess Diana's final ride to decades of probing palace archives, my life revolved around tracing the truth behind headlines. I measured my worth by bylines and cable interviews, certain that unmasking hidden motives would bring justice. I lived for the next lead, the next tip, convinced inquiry alone could ease grief and deliver revelation. Yet I never paused to consider consequences beyond headlines. Obsession fueled long nights scrutinizing photographs, cold calls to frightened witnesses, and tense confrontations with silent officials. Then came that night behind a London pub. I collapsed in an alley, clutching my chest, the memory of streetlights tilting in a blur. Paramedics raced against time, and I felt myself unmoored from flesh. There was no agony, only a serene void, and a distant echo of Diana's laughter. As I drifted toward darkness, I realized I had sought truth at the expense of my own peace. In the gleaming offices where I presented my findings, I felt invincible. I pored over confidential cables and video stills, every clue a spark in my restless mind. I shrugged off invitations for dinner, canceled vacations to review crash site photos, and drank black coffee until dawn. Friends teased me about my obsession, but I saw only progress. My apartment transformed into a war room, walls plastered with timelines, red threads connecting photos to documents. I believed that if I decrypted every secret, I would conquer uncertainty. Yet all that faded when my chest tightened and darkness beckoned. It altered me. When my pulse stilled at 11:55 p.m., I expected oblivion, but instead, I soared into a realm of pure luminance. I found myself gliding along a corridor of light, so brilliant that it rippled like liquid glass. There was no ground beneath my feet, only a gentle buoyancy that made every movement feel weightless. All around me, walls of opalescent mist swirled with pastel hues of dawn, soft pinks melting into golden rays that danced across my vision. As I emerged from the corridor, I stood on a broad terrace carved from translucent pearl. Rolling fields of radiant blooms stretched to the horizon, each petal glowing with its own inner fire. I inhaled deeply and tasted the sweetness of 100 unseen flowers in a single breath. Rivers of molten silver curved through emerald meadows, their surfaces alive with reflections of impossible skies. Above those fields, flocks of ethereal beings soared, their wings woven from strands of moonlight and stardust. They sang in voices that resonated within my chest, a harmonized melody of hope, joy, and welcome. Descending to meet me and surrounding me in gentle arcs, they brushed my shoulder with soft feathers that felt like warmth itself. Beyond the terrace lay a city of crystalline spires and open gates. Its walls shimmered like diamonds at sunrise, and the air vibrated with a symphony of laughter, music, and whispered greetings in every language. I walked toward the gates, each step echoing with a soft chime, as though the realm itself heralded my arrival. At the city's heart stood a grand fountain fashioned from living light. Water cascaded in rivulets of pure radiance, pooling in an onyx basin etched with symbols of unity and peace. I approached and saw my reflection framed by threads of gold. Yet in that image, I glimpsed the man I had been, restless, relentless, driven by questions that never ceased. In that moment, the laughter and song hushed, and a presence enveloped me, soothing, yet powerful. A gentle voice spoke not in words, but in warmth that echoed through every fiber of my being. Here, your pursuit of truth finds its home and love. As the words settled into my soul, the city around me pulsed with an embrace of serenity beyond anything I had ever experienced. Every horizon seemed alive with welcome, as though the realm was woven from compassion. The air thrummed with possibility, and I understood that this luminous domain offered every soul rest and hope renewed. I hovered certain this light would guide home. As I ventured deeper into that radiant realm, figures began to appear along the mosaic paths, each one bathed in the same soft luminescence that suffused the air. The first was a man in medieval armor, his helm cast aside, revealing eyes that held questions rather than accusations. He bowed, and I sensed in his gaze a kinship born of shared burden, a ruler who carried the weight of countless souls, yet yearned for forgiveness. A few steps on, I encountered a woman garbed in simple linen robes, her hands scarred by years of healing others. She reached out with calm assurance, placing a gentle palm against my chest. At her touch, memories flickered. All the nights I dismissed cries for help as distractions from my investigations. Her compassion flowed into me, softening the edges of my ambition. Then, in the rosy glow ahead, I saw her, Princess Diana, stepping forward with quiet grace. Her radiant smile illuminated the plaza like dawn breaking over stormy seas. She wore a gown woven from strands of dawnlight, each thread shimmering with empathy. Her eyes met mine, and in them I saw both sorrow and solace. I remembered every report I wrote, every theory I pursued, and the toll it had taken on those who mourned her. Diana extended her hand, and as I took it, she guided me toward a pool of liquid silver at the plaza's center. The surface mirrored my reflection, but it was not just my face I saw. It was the man I had become, tireless, inquisitive, yet always just beyond reach of inner peace. Ripples spread from where our fingers touched the water, distorting the image until it was replaced by visions of moments I had traded for headlines. Birthdays missed, friendships frayed, compassion deferred. A soft voice drifted through the air, a harmony of every language I had studied. Truth alone cannot heal. It must be clothed in mercy. The words resonated within me as the blossoms around us trembled, releasing pollen that glowed like stardust. In that instant, I realized that every fact I unearthed was incomplete without understanding the hearts behind them. As the ripples died away, Diana spoke without sound, her presence filling the space between us with hope. She had answered my unspoken question. The ultimate revelation was not a concealed conspiracy, but a love profound enough to encompass all our frailties. Then, hand in hand, we turned toward the city's gates, where light and song beckoned me forward toward a destiny I had never dared imagine. Forgiveness awaits the silence that followed Princess Diana's final gesture rang louder than any thunder I had ever chased. Hand in hand, we walked through an archway of living vines, their leaves glinting with dew of pure light. She guided me into a hidden garden where blossoms bloomed on branches of crystal and streams whispered secrets of eternity. This garden of wholeness was unlike any place I had read about. It felt like the sum of every hope I had ever dared to imagine. Cradled within its heart was an ancient tree whose trunk was carved with names that pulsed with soft radiance. Diana knelt and pressed her fingertips against the bark. "Place your hand here," she beckoned. I obeyed, and a current of warmth traveled up my arm, settling into my chest. Visions unfurled in my mind, my relentless pursuit of Diana's death, the nights spent in lonely hotel rooms, poring over crash site images, the cold interviews where I pried into shattered lives. Each memory glowed with surreal clarity, as though the tree itself held a mirror to my soul. I saw my own reflection intermingled with headlines I had written. Investigative journalist uncovers new evidence. Royal secrets exposed. The words burned with hollow triumph. I realized that in my quest for answers, I had neglected questions of the heart. My obsession had become a veil that blinded me to compassion. Tears welled in my eyes as Diana's voice filled the air, not in words, but in a gentle echo. Truth is the root, but love is the blossom. The garden responded. Petals drifted down like gentle rain, each glowing flower dissolving into motes of light that danced around me. The air carried the scent of jasmine and rosemary, grounding me in the sweetness I had long overlooked. I sank to my knees before the tree, my heart laid bare. I admit I was consumed by my need to know. I whispered, voice trembling. I pursued your story as though it were a puzzle to solve, never pausing to honor your humanity. The names carved in the trunk pulsed brighter, and a stream of silver sap oozed down, coating my fingertips with its healing glow. In that moment of surrender, the garden itself seemed to exhale. The crystal blossoms around us turned fully luminous, and the vines wove together to form a canopy of radiant filaments. Diana stood, her eyes shining with compassion. She reached into the folds of her starlight gown and withdrew a single glowing thread. With a gentle smile, she looped it around my wrist, binding my confession in a light that would never fade. This is the promise of mercy, Diana conveyed without sound. It is given freely to those who confess the shadows within. The thread tightened, and I felt the burdens of my pride and obsession lift as though carried away by a breeze of grace. My chest that had cramped with guilt expanded with relief. As the garden's lullaby faded into my bones, I stood beneath a sky woven from dawn's first light. The memory of pain and obsession felt distant, like a dream melting with the morning sun. The gentle hum of life pulsed through the earth beneath my feet, and I realized that this realm thrived on the interplay of truth and love. No secret remained hidden here. Every confession bore fruit that nourished the soul. Before I passed through the glowing arch, I turned back for a final glimpse. Diana stood at the threshold, her form suffused with a serenity that transcended time. She raised her hand in blessing, and the air shimmered as though angels had woven ribbons of sound around her farewell. In that instant, I understood that history's greatest mysteries would never compare to the simple miracle of grace. The moment stretched before me, suspended between worlds. Then, with a reluctant exhale, I stepped forward. The archway folded into itself like a closing book, and I felt the thread on my wrist pulse with enduring light. It was a covenant that would guide my steps in the days ahead, a constant reminder that I had witnessed a truth more profound than facts alone. And as I drifted toward a luminous corridor, I carried with me the promise that love, once found, becomes the brightest testimony of all the corridor of light narrowed, and then opened onto a garden aglow with living radiance. There, beneath arches woven of golden vines, I saw him, Jesus, standing beside Princess Diana. His presence was at once gentle and majestic, each breath a wave of peace that stilled my racing heart. He stepped forward, the hem of his robe brushing petals that lifted and drifted like lanterns of hope. His eyes, deep pools of compassion, met mine without judgment. All at once, I felt the weight of my obsession, pride, and fear laid bare before him. I trembled, aware of every cutting question I had posed, every life I had poured over without tender regard. He raised a scarred hand in blessing, and the air hummed with a melody I seemed to know from birth. Without a word, he placed his hand over my chest. A warmth spread through me, dissolving guilt like ice under the summer sun. Visions flickered, my countless nights chasing truth in lonely hotel rooms, the severed relationships I'd left in my wake, the hollow triumph of breaking big stories that earned applause, but never healing. Then I heard his voice within. Truth is vital, but without love it wounds. Let compassion be your lens. The words resonated like a bell in my soul. In that instant, every wound I'd inflicted, on others and on myself, began to heal. In the space of his silence, I experienced mercy so profound that tears sprang unbidden. Princess Diana stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me, and I felt the garden's light swirl into a cocoon of grace. Jesus' final gift was a gentle promise echoing in my mind. Go and bear witness to truth clothed in love. As the vision faded, the golden arches dissolved into light, leaving me cradled in peace I had never known and charged with a purpose beyond any headline. That I awoke to the steady beep of monitors and the sterile scent of antiseptic. The hospital room's pale walls felt both foreign and familiar, as if I'd returned not just to my body, but to a life I hardly recognized. Tubes led into my arm, and nurses moved with gentle efficiency. I blinked away tears, not from pain, but from the lingering warmth of that heavenly garden and the promise of mercy still pulsing in my veins. My mind replayed every detail. The silver rivers, the crystalline spires, Diana's starlight gown, and Jesus' silent blessing. I could almost feel the thread of grace around my wrist. Yet here in this room, those visions felt like memories from another lifetime. A lifetime before I had traded compassion for headlines, curiosity for compassion, and truth for obsession. Friends and colleagues gathered at my bedside, their voices hushed with concern. They spoke of a miraculous recovery and the need for rest. I nodded, but my heart wrestled with a deeper transformation. I realized that simply returning to work would risk burying the revelation under deadlines and monthly targets. What good was uncovering facts if I remained blind to human need? Over the next days, I sat by the window and watched the London skyline. The Thames glinted in the morning light, and a fleet of riverboats drifted lazily beneath ancient bridges. I thought of the silver rivers of heaven and understood that reality could be just as luminous if seen through eyes of mercy. I began to question every choice. The interviews I'd rushed, the families I'd ignored, the nights I'd sacrificed for one more scoop. I asked a visiting chaplain to read passages that spoke of love entwined with truth. As scripture and poetry wove together, my old certainties melted. I wept for the daughter of Bath I'd never met, and for the grieving witnesses I'd left without comfort. I vowed that no byline would ever again cost me a human heart. When hospital staff cleared me to leave, I stepped into the corridor with a journal in hand. I wrote not about leads or witnesses, but about mercy, moments of kindness I would extend to others, and promises to myself to listen before I questioned. Each word felt like a footfall on the silver marble of that heavenly plaza. In the weeks that followed, I traded my suit for simpler attire and volunteered at a local charity, supporting families of accident victims. I shared my story not as a sensational headline, but as a testament to hope renewed. Each tear I offered in empathy became a bridge between my past and the path ahead. Now, every morning I pause at the water's edge, letting the Thames echo the river of light I saw. I recite prayers of gratitude and ask for the courage to let compassion shape my work. The real story, I have learned, lies not just in facts uncovered, but in hearts touched. And in that revelation, I am finally home. Each article I now write bears the imprint of grace, investigative rigor fused with stories of resilience, showing how compassion can transform tragedy into triumph. I consult families before publishing, listen before probing, and dedicate each byline to the healing I witnessed. My renewed mission is clear: reveal truth wrapped in empathy, guiding readers toward hope as well as facts. In classrooms, I mentor young journalists to honor humanity in every investigation. Since that night, my life has become a living testament to the mercy I encountered. I launched a series of public forums, Truth and Compassion in Journalism, where families of high-profile tragedies share their stories alongside experts, fostering understanding instead of sensationalism. Each session begins with a moment of silence for lost loved ones and ends with volunteers offering meals, counseling resources, and prayer circles. I also partnered with Diana's former charity, establishing a scholarship for aspiring journalists from underprivileged backgrounds. Recipients train in ethical reporting and community engagement, ensuring that future investigations uplift, rather than exploit, vulnerable voices. Watching these young writers flourish reminds me how seeds of grace can transform fields once sown with ambition alone. In print and on air, I now frame every discovery within the broader context of human dignity. When new evidence emerges, I interview both experts and families, balancing hard data with honest empathy. My colleagues initially met this shift with skepticism. Was I softening the edge of hard-hitting news? But viewer responses tell a different story. Messages pour in thanking me for honoring grief with sensitivity and for restoring faith in journalism's higher purpose. At home, I keep a simple ritual. Each dawn, I light a candle by the window overlooking the Thames, whispering a prayer of gratitude for the light that found me. I continue to study royal archives, yet I pause to volunteer in shelters and to walk through parks where laughter echoes, reminding me that joy and sorrow coexist. Every day, I wear the silver thread Diana wove around my wrist. It serves as a constant reminder that facts without kindness are incomplete. My testimony lives in every article, every conversation, and every act of mercy. In this way, I honor not only her memory, but the promise that love transforms the truth into hope.